I'm Jane Meyers, and today I want to talk to you about sex. So what do you think about when you think of sex? There's probably a lot of things that come to mind, but I'll tell you that as a counselor, I see an awful lot of people who come in and they tell me that their problem in their relationship is sex. There's too much sex, not enough sex, wrong kind of sex, sex with the wrong person. Something about sex is the problem. And what I'd like to tell you today is that sex is never the problem. Sex is the canary in the coal mine. If you're too young to know what that means, it refers to way back in the, I think probably like the early part of the 1900s, when the technology for coal mining wasn't what it was today. And so in order to survive, miners would bring a canary in a cage down into the coal mine with them. And if there started to be a toxic leak, the fumes would kill the canary first because its body was so little. And so when they saw the canary die, they wouldn't say, "Oh, the poor canary." I mean, maybe they should have, but at any rate, they weren't worried about the canary and reviving the canary and all focused on the canary. They realized it was a warning signal and they better get the heck out of the mine or they would be just like the canary. So when I say that sex is the canary in the coal mine, it's a symptom. Something else is not going well in your relationship if you're having problems with sex. And rather than focus on sex per se, not to say that it doesn't need attention, it does, but to explore and go deeper and find out what it is that is not being expressed that needs to be communicated. The people that I studied with, Gay and Katie Hendricks, said that the greatest aphrodisiac is truth. You would be amazed at the number of people who fail to disclose really important things, like I'm having an affair, for example, or I feel dead in this relationship, or I really want to do this thing in my career, but I'm afraid to even head in that direction because it might upset you. There are all kinds of things that people keep to themselves, and as you hold it in, resentment builds. And the resentment creates space between you and your partner. And when there's space between you and your partner, it's not so easy to have sex. It's as if there's a third person in the room, and that third person is the things unsaid. Most people say to me, I can't tell him, I can't tell her that. And by that they mean if I reveal what's true, the other person is going to get mad or going to cry, usually one or the other, and you're afraid of dealing with that emotional fallout, and so you keep it in. But there's a heavy, heavy price to pay for that, and it's the vitality of your marriage or your relationship. If you tell the truth, the person probably will cry or get mad. But if you want to have a relationship, on the other side of the upset is where the healthy relationship will be. Now, I want to say this with caution. You have to know the person that you're in relationship with. If you're in a relationship with someone who is abusive, who's going to beat you silly because you say this, keep your mouth shut. You already have a relationship that isn't worth keeping. So don't do that to yourself. But assuming that you have a reasonable relationship, you're not going to die because the other person gets mad. You're not going to die because the other person is crying. So as you go on the other side of whatever it is you have to reveal, then the challenge is for both of you to talk about how did we get here to where this is true, whatever this is. People think that when one person acts out in the relationship and does something like have an affair, for example, that's the classic one, it always looks like the person who had the affair is the bad one. But that is never true. I'm not saying that let's put a halo on that person. I'm saying that it takes two. And so while this person was out having an affair, what were you doing? Were you asleep at the wheel? Were you paying any attention to this person? is this person the fifth in a line of relationships where the person has cheated on you? Could there possibly be something to do with you? Like you believe that that's what partners do, they cheat, or you yourself perhaps have cheated but have never mentioned it, or you don't believe that you're worth paying attention to. There's always something there, and the discovery of what that is where the richness comes in a relationship. I had an experience with my husband that was very interesting. This happened a number of years ago, and he was attracted to this younger woman and decided that he wanted to see if he could be friends with her. You know, how does it work? Can men and women be friends when one of them is married or both of them are married? And so he told me that he wanted to do that, and he kept me informed every step of the way, which really took a lot of the drama out of it in terms of me worrying. But he was under the impression that this was someone who was sort of interested in having an affair with him, and they had set it up to go for a walk. And of course the first thing he said to her was, "Oh yeah, Jane knows." and so that sort of, since she knew me, it took some of the wind out of her sail. But he proceeded to explore it and talk about it to me and talk about it to all his siblings, who all told him, you know, was he crazy? What was he risking? He has this great wife, and you know, he must be nuts. And I think he was kind of feeding on the drama. But anyway, as he stayed in that process, it took quite a while. It took a few months. But where he finally got to was that at 50, he was dealing with his own sense that he was getting old, and he'd never had a child of his own. And here was a younger woman who was with an older man, and she wanted children. So that was on the surface. But so even deeper than that was the realization that with our girls, who were teenagers at the time, he really didn't feel like he had authority. Because they had been my girls and he had come in as the stepfather, he just felt like he had no role, and so having his own was a way to get some authority. But what he really wanted was not so much a new baby and all that that entails, but some authority and respect. And so he and I were able to talk about that and retweak his role in the relationship with the girls, and it was very successful. But if I had freaked out at the beginning when he said he was interested in this other woman and said, "There will be no other woman in this relationship," he never would have gotten to explore that. Now, you know, we had the advantage of we had really established very honest communication before that happened. So I'm going to put the caveat of don't necessarily try this at home, but you have to feel what's right for your relationship. All I'm saying is that what on the surface looks like it's a problem about sex can be something totally different. And if you don't freak out about it, if instead you're willing to go deep and see what's there, you can find much more richness in your relationship. And actually, in that story, there was a real benefit for me as well, because when he explored this whole thing about feeling like he wasn't having any authority with the girls, I got to look at my issues around my fear of authority. I had a story that I told myself that my father was, you know, so mean and such an strict authority. It wasn't really that bad by any means, but in my mind and how I remembered it, I think I had sort of taken the 5-year-old and transplanted it in my grown-up brain and never updated the files. And so I was telling myself the story that my father was so strict and mean, and so I didn't really trust Ron to be the authority, because that's the way men were, you know, they're just mean and strict. And so in my own ways, I was undermining his authority, but I didn't realize that. And so I got to look at this from a fresh perspective and say, you know what, regardless of what my father was or wasn't like, this man that I'm with is not like that. I can actually trust him. And so it helped me to shift my hang-ups around authority, which was very, very positive for me. So my message for you today is that if you think there's an issue around sex, begin to explore what are you not telling the truth about to one another. and start speaking from the heart and telling the truth and dig a little deeper and find what's real. And if you do, your sex life will have a lot more zip. I'm Jane Meyers, and here's to a great sex life.